Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room, your home for Detroit sports news and information. Now, here's Jim.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room. And today I have a special guest. His name is Erik Schlitt, and he is the editor at Lions Wire and the co-host of the Lions Breakdown podcast. I welcome you today, Erik. Thank you for being here for me.
Of course, Jim. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, so I mean, you're an editor and you're a podcaster and you write and you have no life more than likely.
Yeah, it's I keep myself pretty busy. I have two little ones and a third on the way, so that's also makes life pretty busy. I'm from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, I'm pretty much going all the time.
Yeah, I understand it. I got that too. I'm a little older, so my kids are out of the house, but I remember those days and not much sleeping, especially when the newborn comes. So get as much as you can now. All right. So what led you to where you are today? Tell me a little bit about your backstory and what happened to get you here today and what you're doing right now.
So when I grew up, I was a Michigan fan, and my dad liked Michigan. I liked Michigan. My neighbors liked them, and so we'd watch Michigan football. And back when I was growing up, you played like the Pac-12 in the bowl games all the time, right? And when I was first starting to get into football, or getting into it a little more seriously, they were playing USC a lot, and they played Rodney Peete a lot. And Rodney Peete was just a terrific college quarterback. And then he was drafted, of course, by the Lions. And when he was drafted in the 6th round. And it was very curious to me because I watched him play college, and I'm like, he's such a terrific college quarterback. Why did he go so late in the NFL draft? And so that kind of piqued my interest in the NFL draft. And so for a while, I started gaining interest in football, but more focused on the roster building aspect, why the draft players were valued differently in college than they were in the pros. And then around 2000, I started creating some little writing pieces about the draft for just my buddies. I would make just open Word documents and just say, look, this is where I think the Lions are. These are the different players that I like. Here's some at different levels. And I started studying the draft. And I did that for a long time. Every year I'd put out, after the season was over, I'd put out a state of the Lions, where are they now? Who are potential guys they could look at in free agency. And it was really just something to do, a hobby. And so then as we're growing older, it was just, I started getting more friends that were interested in it. And I got better at it, and I found tricks and ways to communicate my thought process better. And then from there, I got married, and then I had kids. And my oldest, she has special needs. And when she was 18 months, she started needing to go to speech therapy, and she needed to get some extra special schooling and stuff that was ahead of what you would normally get around 4 or 5, right? And so my wife and I had now our second child, and so I had my oldest who needed some extra attention, and my youngest who was a newborn, and we made the decision that I would step away from my job, and I would take care of the kids. She makes more money than me, and so that's great. I'm very lucky about that. And so I stepped away, and I took care of the kids, got them through the appointments, took care of the newborn and whatnot. And I kind of fell into a rhythm of my whole life was about the two kids. And my wife said, well, you need to have a better hobby, something like a habit, something to do. And so I was on Twitter, and I saw an advertisement for someone that said, hey, you want to write for a Lions blog? And I went, oh, well, whatever. I'll submit a piece and see if they're interested. And they were, and they accepted me. And I wrote for them for about a year. And from there, I started to grow a little bit bigger, and I started to get doors open for me. And then all of a sudden, everything just kind of took off very rapidly for me. And then I got picked up when USA Today started the Lions Wire site. It was a brand new site. I got brought on as the number 2. Then I got credentialed by the Lions, which was a bit of a rarity because of the way the Lions operate historically with bloggers. And from there, it's just kind of gone. Like now I have more responsibility and I have a say in what gets produced and the type of content that's out there. I have contacts with players and coaches, and it's really become something that I've always thought would be fun to do, but never really knew how to get there. And I just kind of like fell into it as a way of just expanding something that I was doing for a decade or maybe even a decade and a half as a hobby. And then all of a sudden the last like 5 or 6 years have really just been like a whirlwind of, how big can I get? How much success can I get? How much access can I get? And a lot of hard work and, getting the right doors open for me by other people. I'm definitely not going to say that I did this on my own. I had a lot of people that helped me, but my work ethic and my desire to be better, my desire to get into the building, those things drove me. And it was just a big combination of things that I found things that I was good at, and I had a direction. And so I was just really fortunate. So that's kind of like the summary of how I've gotten to this point. I've always been a fan of football. But I never thought like writing about them was something that was realistic. Even when I started writing about them, I never thought that was really something that was like that realistic. And then I've been very fortunate with the things that have come my way. So that's how I've gotten here in kind of a nutshell.
It's a story that I really like because it's hard work and it's a person that deserves it, in my opinion. Also, you seem like such a good dude, man. You take care of the family. I mean, you're taking care of kids, an infant, and a special needs child. I mean, that's a lot of work in itself. People don't realize how much work that really is.
Yeah.
And it's something where, I think you're modest because I think that you have a lot more talent than you're let on. You know what I'm saying, with the writing skills and things like that. I've seen things that you write. You're a very good writer, and so I just appreciate the good hard work stories. Of, hey, you know what? I just kept doing it. I kept trying, and I kept trying to kick down doors. I had people open doors for me, and it's a cool story. You kind of mentioned Rodney Peete. Yeah. Is that your entrance into Lion fandom, or was there another reason you kind of became a fan of the Lions?
No, I was always a fan of the Lions, but I was never like immersed into it. That Rodney Peete year was the Barry Sanders year, right?
Yes.
So there was a lot of good things coming the Lions' way at that particular time. But I grew up in Michigan, and so I've always been exposed to them as like my team. I watched Billy Sims when I was younger, and Barry, of course, was Barry, which was just transcendent of what the Lions, it introduced a lot of people to Lions fandom. But I grew up and I played soccer, and soccer and football happened at the same time. So I never really played football. I only played like casually. I never played. I tried doing it from an organization, like organized football, but I was always drawn to soccer. I thought that was always going to be kind of my path somewhere. But 99.9% of the world, the talents only take you so far, right? Before you end up, watching or writing about them. And, but I was fascinated by how good Rodney Peete was. And then I thought, man, he's a really good talent. Barry Sanders is of course an elite talent. And that's when I really started to focus more about what the Lions were about, more than just being a casual observer, I guess I would say.
Right. Yeah, that Barry Sanders, he seems to get quite a few of us. Rodney Peete, right. Not as much. I think you're the first person that's mentioned Rodney Peete.
I really liked him. I really
No,
liked
I
him.
did not like him.
Yeah.
I didn't like his comments when he went to Dallas, but it is what it is. I mean, we haven't been the greatest organization of all time, so I
Sure.
could see where players get upset and things. We've had some of that recently and things like that, which is either here nor there. But I want to get into a little bit more of the draft, because it seems like you know a lot about the draft, a lot about what do you think about the Lions draft this year?
It was a bit of a different approach than the way that I thought they would attack the draft. I thought Okudah was like a no-brainer. His talent is phenomenal. I believe he's going to be an elite corner in the league in the next couple of years. He's going to have bumps this year, but that comes with it. But I thought Okudah was a no-brainer at the top. But then when you got into the second round, I still thought there was such turnover on defense that they might stay on that side of the ball. The fact when they went back and got Swift, it was surprising to me, mostly because he didn't fit exactly the style of running back that they had attacked in the past. And so, one, I was a bit surprised it was running back. Two, I was a bit surprised it was Swift and not one of the other, like J.K. Dobbins was the guy I thought it might have been.
I thought it was going to be Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. I had all three of them ranked in the same tier for me.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I thought it would have been Taylor or Dobbins instead of Swift. But from talking to people behind the scenes and whatnot, they're very excited about Swift. And so it sounds like they believe the goal for the long-term goal for him is very high. And so that's exciting. They seem to be very high on taking him as a player. There's no doubting his talent. He's got that dead leg in the open field is just unstoppable. His ability to just change direction is terrific. Excellent hands, good pass blocker. He's in
spin move.
Yeah, he has all the talent that you would expect like an all-purpose back in the NFL to be. So there's a high ceiling for him. So while that was surprising to me that they went defense, I understand from what they're trying to accomplish, that's the way that they would go. Akwara was next. And again, it was, I was a bit surprised it was Akwara with a couple of the other edge rushers, but again, I shouldn't be surprised it was Akwara because of the connections. The Lions have a long history of connecting players with other family members or sons of coaches that they've, been there in the past. So there's always seems to be these parallels that the Lions find. And so I shouldn't have been surprised by it, but I did think they might have looked at a guy like Terrell Lewis, who also kind of fit the mold. Mm-hmm. But Akwara fits in a different way. And one of the things that Akwara did was he changed my perspective on what I think they're going to do with the linebackers this year. Typically, the Lions operate with their two off-the-ball linebackers and then a linebacker that's on the edge. And the Devin Kennard spot, the jack spot, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But by eliminating or moving on from Devin Kennard and then bringing in Akwara, it kind of looks like a natural fit. But I don't think that's the way they're going to go. I think they're going to actually try and make all three of those positions like kind of a hybrid position where linebackers are going to move in and out of them, mm-hmm. Having more positional fluidity. Jamie Collins allows them to do that.
Yep.
And I think Akwara has some of those Jamie Collins attributes. He can cover, he can come off the edge, and while he looks more like an edge rusher, he has some off the ball skills, and that's a natural talent to put at that jack spot. Now, I don't know how often he's going to get there this year. I don't know how often they're going to drop him in coverage this year. He's coming off injury with the COVID situation. The learning curve is much shorter right now for him, so it's going to be interesting to see how he gets used, but I believe the long-term goals are to have him turn into like a Jamie Collins type of player, a guy who can play all over the linebacking unit. So now we're getting into more like that long-term potential. The Jonah Jackson pick after that, if he starts, that could be the best value pick that they have this whole draft, because if you're getting a third rounder that's going to come in and give you starter reps, then that's great. Jonah Jackson was, again, I had a couple of guys higher on my list than I thought were better fits, but he's an excellent pass blocker, and it's something that they really need in order to keep Stafford clean. So I liked what they did. I liked the Jackson pick from a pass protection standpoint. He's still got a little bit to go from a run, from run blocking standpoint, but that'll come. That'll come with time, right? They go after Stenberg with the next pick, so now you're going a little bit more aggressive and more mean, right? We'll see what ends up with him. Maybe he earns starting reps. That's still kind of out there right now with training camp being limited and whatnot. We'll see what happens with both of those guards. They may not. Neither of them could start, but they could get worked in that guard rotation that we've seen. And then, or maybe one of them wins it. Maybe one of them just beats out the guy in front of them, and that could happen too. So, after that, they added a lot of specific talent that fit into certain spots. Cephas is going to be your big slot. That's something they were missing when they added Geronimo Allison in the offseason. He's kind of a big slot. Now you had Cephas as a big slot. You had Hunter Bryant as a UDFA. He's a big slot. So they've got guys that can fill a role that they didn't have last year. So I like the Cephas pick. Huntley is, again, I believe will step right into the J.D. McKissick role. It's another important aspect of the Bevel offense. You have to be able to go vertical, but you also have to be able to be flexible out of the backfield as well. You get that with Swift. You get that with Huntley. And then Pennicini, the nose tackle, is the next guy off the board. Pennicini is everything that you want in a nose tackle as a reserve nose tackle, backing up. Why am I blanking on the?
Danny Shelton.
Thank you, Danny Shelton. Danny Shelton's a great role model for Pennicini. So he's got to beat out Atkins still, but we'll see how that goes. Atkins is a little bit inconsistent, but he has experience. So, but I think Pennicini's
Strong there as well.
Well, and then Strong is going to match up right against the 7th round pick, Jayshon Cornell. I think both of those guys can be your 3-technique kind of hybrid defensive end in big sets that are going to play behind Deshaun Hand and Nick Williams. And I'm a big Kevin Strong fan. I love his first step. And I've talked to him. He's a great person. But Cornell, there's a lot of talent there. And it's possible that those two are really going to battle it out for that kind of final third defensive tackle spot. So
Cornell's really underrated in my view. I thought he was really good and really came on at Ohio State at the end.
Yeah,
I didn't think he was as good in the beginning, but boy, as the year went on, he started getting better and better and better for me. I like Huntley. I like the speed. I like the flexibility where he can actually return kicks and stuff like that too. He could be a wideout if you need him to be. He can get in that slot too and play that position. I was impressed with I like Stenberg a lot. I think he doesn't have enough bend right now to be a pro blocker. He's too tall. He plays too high. So, they're going to have to really work with him on his flexibility to be a starter. I think it's going to take him a lot longer than Jonah Jackson because I think he's more ready.
Yeah, Stenberg's also got to not bury everyone 6 feet under the ground, too.
Yes.
Yeah. If you learn some of that patience, that'll help him go a long way, too.
Yeah. You love the attitude, though.
For sure.
I think him and Ragnow are pretty similar, although Ragnow's so much more athletic. He's probably one of the most athletic centers I've ever seen.
He's incredible.
Seriously, he's a beast. But I like him. I like Jonah Jackson. I'm a little worried about the Swift pick. I don't know if a lot of people are, but he's been nicked up, and we have a history of injured running backs, and I'm a little worried about that aspect of it. But I think that Darrell Bevell had a huge influence on this draft, and that's why this draft ended up a little different than what most people thought it might be. What are your thoughts on Darrell Bevell, and do you think I'm right about him being influential in this year's draft?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Darrell Bevell. I think what he wants to do and what Stafford is capable of doing are a very nice marriage. And the two of them, we saw glimpses of it in the first half of last season, where they were one of the top 10 offenses in the league pretty easily, and that was just getting started. If that would have continued, they were ascending, right? It wasn't like they had plateaued or were regressing. They were an ascending offense at that time, and they basically went into this offseason and just added more talent to it. So I do think I believe the focus on offense was to do three things. One, add more speed, which they did in Huntley and Swift, and by switching Agnew over to offense, you've added more speed.
Yep.
They wanted to add that big slot position, which again, like I mentioned earlier, you added Cephas, Allison, and Hunter Bryant. And then the third thing is, and I think was the main focus, was they wanted to improve the run game, which is why they invested 2 high picks on guards, signed Vitae early, also drafted Swift early. They really want that emphasis of being able to run the ball effectively. So I do think they leaned on Bevel to say, which guys are going to get us what we need in order to be successful. And I think that's a wise decision. I also think they probably asked all the position coaches too, and allowed those position coaches to get, specific input on those certain guys. Hank Fraley surely weighed in on the guard picks, and I'm sure Kyle Kasky had a lot to say about Swift and probably Huntley as well. So I do think Bevel was an influencer on making some of those offensive decisions that they made, but I think their position coaches were also, they leaned on them a little bit because they fit stylistically what those position coaches like to do as well. Fraley, if you remember, we were in the NFL. He was a mean guard. He was somewhat athletic, but he liked to play mean, and that's what these guys do. And the same thing when you look at Kasky's track record. He does very well with younger backs, and he has in Cincinnati he took 3 different running backs and made them like super talent. So if this is a guy that Kasky said, hey, I like that guy, I'm sure that resonated with Bob Quinn and the coaching staff. And if Bevel said, hey, yeah, he fits what we're trying to do here, because he can do some of the J.D. McKissick role as well. So there's a lot to like about what they added. And like I said, they didn't lose much, and they just added more. So if it goes back to operating at that top 10 level, now you add more talent. Yeah, I definitely think they're trying to win with offense this year.
I agree with that. I agree with that a lot. I think one question I do have, though, is about T.J. Hawkinson and the myth, and I think it's a myth. It's just my opinion, that Darrell Bevel can't use tight ends. Have you heard this one? Probably have.
Well, look, you invested heavily in Jesse James, and then you drafted Hawkinson, and then you didn't get a lot of production out of it, so people are going to be down on Darrell Bevel. But Darrell Bevel used Jimmy Graham in Seattle and turned Jimmy Graham into Jimmy Graham, right? Mm-hmm. So he was Jimmy Graham in New Orleans too. New Orleans too. But he's used tight ends in the past. If anything, I don't think it's a Bevel thing. I think it's a Stafford thing. Stafford just has never really relied on tight ends. Even when he had Ebron, he's had Pettigrew, he's had Ebron, both first-round picks before Hawkinson. He's just never really relied on them. Stafford,
both of those were unreliable in the first place. Both of them dropped quite a few passes.
I
know Ebron was dropping a lot of passes. I had a joke a long time ago. We had Megatron, and then I called Pettigrew, dropped up his prime. It was terrible, but it was a long time ago. But I agree with you though. But I don't think I agree with you on that. I
think it's just Stafford's approach. Stafford wants to hit you deeper down the field than most tight ends can get, and he's always looking long to deep. It feels like, and it's a little different. Some quarterbacks will look short to long, but realistically they should be looking long, and progressing down. Mm-hmm. And Stafford has such a big arm that even when he might not have a window deep, he still thinks he can make that, and he'll still take those throws a lot of time, and that's just part of the nature of him being a quarterback. But he's never really featured a tight end more in the offense. It's always been his style. But it's not to say it can't happen. I mean, look at week 1 against Arizona. You know, he went for 134 and a touchdown, right? And so, I mean, he can do it. And they've just got to, I think Bevel's got to call more plays that feature tight ends. I think Stafford has to look that way a little bit more. You know, he's got weapons that can go deep. Kenny, Marvin are great, both contested. You got Marvin Hall, who, you know, averaged 35 yards or whatever, 40. It was 40 yards at one point a catch. He's got guys that can go deep. If he starts looking more intermittent and that's Hawkinson. If he starts looking more in the flats, and he has those weapons now. He has weapons that can get out into the flats. If he starts spreading it around, if they purposely start making him, you know, spread it around, this is an offense that can keep defenses unbalanced for sure. The talent is there.
There are so many weapons on this offense. DeAndre Swift, even out of the backfield. Then you got Huntley, and you've got it just doesn't end. You know, Jesse James and Marvin Jones and T.J. Hawkins, and then to a lesser extent, Danny Amendola has quite a bit of tread left in the tires there, I think. Yeah,
he almost had a career year last year. I mean, and that's at 35, right? So
yeah, he's a warrior, though. I mean, he stays in tremendous shape. So I don't even look at the age on Danny Amendola.
He's very intense.
Yes, he is.
And that intensity doesn't shut off when the game's over. When he's in the locker room, he is intense. Mm-hmm. And when he's leaving, he's intense. Like he's just like at maximum level all the time. Yep. And that's just his nature. That's just the kind of character he is. And that's a big reason why he's been able to be as successful as he has been.
But I think that's extremely good for this Lions team.
Sure.
I mean,
especially because he's been with the Patriots and he's seen them win Super Bowls. That is, he can say to them, I've seen this work. You got to do with this. If you do this, it's going to work. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into making Amendola a leader. Not just what it's his voice in the locker room, it's his performance on the field. There's a lot of factors why he's an important player for the Lions.
His work ethic, his workout ethic.
Sure.
I mean, the things that he does, other players have said it. They're like, oh my God. I mean, I thought I trained hard and then I saw him, you know? And it's like, it's a thing where, okay, this is what it takes to win. Are you other guys willing to do this? Mm-hmm. And if he could get a lot of those people on board, I think this team would start looking different. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been a lazy attitude in Detroit for a long period of time. And I don't know what that's attributed to, or it's just the Lions or whatever it is. It just seems like some people put in the work. I'm not saying they don't, but it just seems like some people are like, they're not going to put in the work they would put in New England.
But having a lot of these guys that come from New England can help sell the message of what Patricia's trying to put out there as well. So, I mean, that helps. Now, at this point, though, it's all basic. It's all Quinn additions. Everyone on the roster except for
Don
Muehlbach and Stafford have basically all been Quinn additions. It was Diggs and Slay and Prater. I'm not Prater. Martin were the last three before Stafford, other than Stafford and Muehlbach. So it's all Quinn additions, and now some of them were additions that he made for Caldwell's staff, but the majority of this team now in year 3 is set up for Patricia and were handpicked for Patricia. So the excuses, they're running out of them at this point. Yes. I mean, realistically, and that's why we saw the Ford family and Sheila Hamp make the decisions that they made in December, talking about having to win now. And that's understandable. When you have 3 years, you should see production on the field. And this season may come with an asterisk, which could buy them more time, but they're going to have to put, W's up on the board. It's just the nature of the business. And I enjoy the approach, and I think the players that are in the locker room, you can see that they buy into the approach, especially the young guys. Like, you talk to the Sean Hands and Tracy Walkers, and these guys have bought into it. And so when you have most of your talented players that are buying into the message and buying into that work ethic, it's only a matter of time before it starts to come together. For Patricia's sake, yeah, it needs to be soon, right?
Yeah. It's sad that it's like that in a way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
what do you
for
think?
sure.
What do you think about the head coach? I have to ask this. I ask this to everybody, and everybody seems to have a different opinion. But what's your opinion on Matt Patricia as the head coach?
So, as a head coach, I believe he's developing and learning. And his first year, it was really, really rocky. It was rocky on the field. It was rocky in the locker room. It was rocky in the media room. There was a lot for him to learn, and his approach came off as abrasive or crash at sometimes. And to his credit, he made a lot of adjustments to that in year 2, and he became a little more easygoing with the media. He became more personable with the players in the locker room. The results still weren't there on the field, which is why he continues to get a bad rep in a lot of ways. But he has shown signs that he's willing to adapt and willing to learn and willing to get better. And that's a sign of a good leader, right? I don't care if he's a coach, or I don't care if he's a GM, I don't care, whatever role, in a leadership role, a leader needs to be able to adapt and get better. And he's doing that. So there's times, though, on the field when I look at him and I say, man, like, this is brilliant. He has such a great mind. He's doing what you need to do. And then there's other times when I'm like, why in the world is he doing that? I don't know if he gets what he needs to do to be an NFL coach. Maybe he's just a really, really good coordinator, and maybe he's not an NFL coach. And so I kind of waver on the field. Off the field, I'm impressed with him as a person, that he's been able to get better. But there's inconsistencies on the field and coaching calls. But when you watch what he does in practice, and when we, this year with training camp and spring camp basically being altered and almost eliminated, we'll lose a lot of that. What we get to see behind the scenes is from the media perspective, and that's a shame, because we get to learn a lot about him. And I'd be very interested to see if the moves that they've made this offseason will translate onto the field. Unfortunately, though, I'm not sure if we'll find out till week 1 or week 3 or 4, you know what I mean, to see if it actually works.
Yep.
But he made positive changes, and I respect that about him. But at the end of the day, he has to be more consistent in his play calling. He has to be more consistent on the field. I feel like he lets teams out of bad situations sometimes, where the Lions will get them on the ropes. Yep. And then he'll let the team come back into it because he gets a little bit too conservative. I'd like to see him press the gas a little bit more, because you can see in almost every game, you can see he knows how to win. But then at the same time, you can see him make bad decisions that will cost them that win. Can he learn that? Can he continue to learn from year 2 to 3 like he did from 1 to 2? If he can, then he can be a really good coach, and this team can go places. If he can't make that connection, then it's going to be a problem, and he might end up being another in a long list of Lions head coaches who end up being great coordinators but not good head coaches.
Yeah. The bad thing for me is there's a couple of things. I don't like the clock management. The use of timeouts is very questionable. He loves to stay like a 3-point game most of the time. If he gets up to too many points, he gets scared and gets to the running game right away. I don't like, and maybe that's just the offensive coordinator. I don't think it is, but it just seems like that's his style. And whatever he tells them at halftime, I don't know what it is, but we come out flat a lot in the third quarter. We have very bad third quarters, and that's, if you've just been able to make adjustments and you've just come out of the halftime room, how do you have that bad of an adjustment? I mean,
what's striking is that it's almost the opposite of Caldwell. Caldwell started slow and then adjusted in the second half, and that's why we saw a lot of those comeback victories. Whereas Patricia, they start out hot and then they come out flat. It's very It's
So
very
we just
180.
hire both of them to be the coach. No, I'm just kidding. Then we got all 4 quarters covered. You did a piece, and it was really cool on salary cap and the implications of COVID and all of this stuff. I had been saying for a while that I thought we weren't signing free agents because we didn't know how much money we were going to have. You did a really nice article on that. What are your thoughts on how COVID, number one, has affected the NFL salary cap situation and what it looks like going forward? And how are the Lions matching up with other teams in that salary cap thing? Like, how good are we going to come out of this, or how are we in this?
They're not in bad shape. They're not the best, but they're by far from the worst. They're basically going to end up about dead middle of the league next year if things kind of stay on course, right? Okay. So the gist of it is the league is going to lose several $billion, like with a B, $1 billion, and the salary cap is determined based on how much the league earns or how much the league loses. What they do is they take the profits from any given year and they give 52% to the owners. Owners get 52 majority share, goes right into their pockets. The 48 then is they then take benefits, retirement plans, and they take money for that right off the top of that 48. And then the remaining is what they use to set the salary cap. So it's been rising for the last decade, right? We saw a couple of small incremental increases 10 years ago and 9 years ago. And then the last 7 years, it's gone up $10 million every year. So we've been seeing this massive growth in the salary cap over the last 7 years. And so teams have started to plan, anticipating that they're going to see $10 million increases every single time. So you see a lot of contracts that are designed that way, and a lot of teams that are quote unquote going for it right now have invested heavily in guys in the next couple of years and trying to get to that Super Bowl. And they're not worrying about what's going to happen a year from now or 2 years from now. And they're just kind of, it's like a credit card. They're pushing things forward. Yeah, exactly. And the Saints are a great example of this. The Saints have been doing this for a while. And they're basically saying, we're going to keep pushing for the Super Bowl until Drew Brees is retired. And when Brees is retired and his contract is off the books, we'll have a little bit more money. And then we're just going to have to start over, essentially. And that's where they're headed. So their cap is a disaster right now for the Saints. Well, the Lions, we've historically been in a bad cap situation because having high draft picks with a unstructured rookie scale, the Lions were in a really bad situation for a really long time, all through Millen, all through Mayhew, just bad spots. So when Quinn comes in, he brings in a capologist with him that helped them kind of right the ship. Then they move on from that capologist and they bring in Mike Disner
from Arizona.
Year and a half ago. And Disner is considered one of the up-and-comers in the NFL. He was on the Forbes 30 for 30, 30 youngest guys in the sports industry under 30 years old. He was just in the Athletics 40 under 40 because this past season he's a very smart guy from Michigan, from West Bloomfield or Bloomfield Hills, I forget which one.
Yeah.
But he's helped manage the cap with Quinn, and their approach has been to always keep a little bit for a rainy day, and by keeping this kind of like piggy banked off to the side, it allowed them to do things like they did last season and sign Mike Daniels, be able to outbid everybody and bring Mike Daniels in with the hopes that he would have turned into the old Mike Daniels. Now, that didn't work out, but they had the opportunity to do that because of their approach to the salary cap. So right now they have about $23 million still available in 2020. Now, that means maybe they add another guy still, or it could mean an extension for Kenny Golladay or Taylor Decker or Matt Prater. You can give extensions out to these guys with that 23. I believe 23 puts them about like 5th in the league in available cap space. Wow. They're still really high up there.
Nice.
But when next year kicks off, the Lions are still going to have a lot of really high-priced guys on their roster, and so they're going to go into next season using a lot of cap on the guys that Quinn has been paying in free agency the last 3 off seasons. So they're going to be able to take the money that they have here. They're going to be able to roll it over, and then they're going to end up next season starting about in the middle of the pack. They'll have like half of the 44, 45 players signed, and it doesn't take that much more to get like the rookies and stuff under. So they're going to be in a good spot starting next year because of the cap management and the approach to the cap management that they've had over the last 3 or 4, even 4 or 5 years. Once they were able to get it in the green, I guess, or in the black, I guess, right? So they're in good shape. They're okay right now. They could be better, and with the losses that the league is going to take, the salary cap is going to decline. And so right now it's at 198 million. Next year, it's going to be potentially as low as 175. So we're talking about $23 million that it's going to drop. That's a huge drop. Yes. And yeah, it essentially all that we have available now would just get wiped out essentially because of the drop. So all the planning that the Lions have been doing is essentially going to get washed, and they're prepared for that, though, because of how they've taken that approach. And like I said, they'll still end up in about the middle of the league, even with the drop in cap. The Saints, for example, are going to be $66 million over the cap next year, which means that they're going to start by having to shed $66 million worth of contracts before the season even starts, before they can even sign a player or a draft pick or anything. They're going to have to shed a ton of money. Now, there's ways to do it. If you have a player that's getting a lot of money, you can convert their base salary into like a signing bonus, and you can free up a lot of money that way. It's very possible. If Matthew Stafford is healthy this year and he has a good season, you could see the Lions do something like that. And if they convert his salary into a bonus, they could free up, I don't know, I haven't looked at the number, but they could free up like $10-15 million in available space just by converting him. The downside of converting a player's salary into a bonus is that you can't cut that player. But if it's a player that you believe in and you're going to stick with, then there's really not a lot of downside from being able to do something like that. The player gets more money up front, and so there's ways to kind of sneak around and get more cap space. The problem is like I said, it's like a credit card. If you're buying some freedom now, but you're kind of putting yourself on the hook for more money later,
kicking the can down the road.
Exactly, and the Lions haven't done that. They've been pretty smart about keeping their salaries, competitive and keeping them low in a lot of ways, trying to develop players into key roles. But they haven't been in like that quote unquote win now, like going for it all type mode, like we said with the Saints. So they're going to be in a better spot because it's not just next year's cap that's going to be impacted. It's going to be 2021, 2022, 23, 24. All 4 of those years are going to be hit. So if your approach is just kick the can, you could be rebuilding through a financial crisis in the league, and that's going to be really hard to make a competitive team. The other teams are in the top half of the league who are building off younger players, been managing their cap. They're going to be able to weather the storm, and they're going to be able to keep their approach and move forward. Lions are in that boat. Lions are in that spot.
Good.
Now, if Quinn's not here, then the next GM inherits that good situation. But if he is, and he keeps that approach, the Lions will not suffer the COVID financial impact like a lot of the other teams in the NFL will. And just last side note here, the Packers. Well, how I said the Lions had about 23 million next year. The Packers would have 6. The Vikings would be 4 million over the 6 million, 4 or 6 million over the cap, and the Vikings are 8 million over the cap. So in our division, the Lions are far and away above the other three teams, and those other three teams are going to have to make some hard decisions next year, getting creative with the cap or cutting players.
So this is going to be interesting for me because I can see a scenario of almost like getting players for pretty cheap, to be honest. Like I can think you could send a 5th round draft pick and somebody's like, I got to shed this salary. This guy's a great player, but I got to shed the salary space. Could you see that becoming a benefit for some of the teams that have managed the cap well to get a really good player at kind of a cheap price and, you know, that type of thing? Yeah, they would push theirs up a little bit more, but I think teams need so much relief, especially like you mentioned, New Orleans, somebody like that, that is just looking to cut players or shed cap space or whatever. It creates kind of a buyer's market for those that have cash.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the trick with the NFL is that it's different. Like you see that happen in baseball a lot, right? Yeah. Where teams will shed salaries essentially. The trick with the NFL is that if you have guaranteed money left on a player's salary,
you have to keep it on
the first team is on the hook for that. But and so you can't really get around that. That's part of the structure that they have designed is that they don't want teams essentially dumping players at trade deadline and stuff like that. So if you can get around the guaranteed money, then you can find ways to shed contracts. We saw it last year with when the Rams traded. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name now. It was a cornerback they traded from the Rams to the Dolphins. An older, he played for a long time in Denver. I'm blanking on his name.
Aqib Talib.
Thank you very much. Good. That's twice now that you've bailed me out on that. I appreciate
no
that.
problem.
But yeah, so Talib had a high contract, and the Rams needed cap relief, and they traded Talib and a high draft pick to the Dolphins for a low draft pick. And so the Rams got basically converted a lower draft pick into a higher draft pick in order to absorb Talib's salary. And it was a benefit for the Dolphins. And then they basically just IR'd him because he had an injury. And so when you IR a player, that player, the salary that they have, even if they're on IR, it still counts towards the cap. So they knew they needed to IR him. If they did IR him, they couldn't have taken the cap hit, so they traded him. Then Miami just basically IR'd him and then took the cap hit. So that was kind of like how they worked that out. Now, we could see something similar though, where teams are looking to shed some of the bigger deals. It's just not as fluid as what we see like in baseball. So more than likely though, there's going to be some bigger name guys that get cut, and then there's not as much cap room, and they'll go to a team that has a lot of cap room. One of the teams that could potentially be very good over the next 5 years is the Colts. They have a really good foundation. They're strong up the middle on both sides of the ball, and they have a boatload of salary cap space. Like next year, even with the loss, they still have almost $100 million in cap space next year.
Yeah, I thought it was like 95 million.
95, yeah. Like it's a ton, and really that's great. Look, they have so much cap space. They're paying Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett more than Matthew Stafford this year. And that's how much cap space they have.
How is that even possible? Are they just putting out fourth graders? Or
no, it comes down to a couple of things. One, they've been playing the long game with the cap for a long time, and they took a lot. They saved a lot of money one year, and then they were able to roll that money over, and so all of that boosted their salaries way up higher than everybody else. They had more room than everybody else by a ton. And then they just didn't spend again. And then they were able to take now that plus a cumulative effect of that and then roll that over to the next spot. Snowball. And so now all of a sudden they're in like a crazy amount of shit. So I think they actually are paying, so salary cap's 198. I think their roster, they actually pay something like $230 million in contracts, but they still have $100 million in available space because they've been rolling. Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow, that's crazy.
The ability to roll over.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that's why. And they're not alone. There's a couple of teams that have done that too. But the Colts have basically they waited and kept money low, and then they've got a surplus. It's at a massive level too. So and then they drafted
the Lions
well.
have started to do that.
Yes,
but I don't think they got far enough down the line to be a big player.
No, and they're still trying to stay competitive. Like now, like they still need to win now, so they're still spending money now, but they're also looking at the future by trying to like not spend as much money as everyone else. So they are kind of taking that approach. The difficult part is that now with the COVID situation, that's going to set them back. Like they were due to open up with about 50 million. Now that's not going to happen. It's going to be much less.
It's awful.
And so, yeah, they're not there. The Colts were able to do it earlier, and they're in a better spot. And that's, congratulations to them and fans of their teams. But yeah, the Lions, it's a work in progress, and it takes time to be able to do that. And it's one of the reasons why when fans look at the 23 million and they're saying, why don't we just go get Jadeveon Clowney?
Right.
And we have 23 million. Why not spend 17 on Jadeveon for 1 year?
Doesn't make any sense.
Well, you could afford him for 1 year, but then you're only rolling over 6 million to next year, and that means you're losing 20 million of availability next year. So signing Jadeveon Clowney for 17 million doesn't hurt this year. It will take away this year, but it also takes away from next year.
Yep.
And that's, I think, what a lot of people don't understand about the cap. I mean, the cap is extraordinarily confusing, and the contracts that they have are really with all the bonus structures and the likely to be earned and non-likely to be earned bonuses, which ones count against this year's contract, which ones count against that. It gets very complex, and so there's never a 100% clear picture. But I guess what the big thing is, I think fans need to really understand that what you do now also impacts the immediate year following. And so that's why teams aren't anxious to go out and spend 17 million. And especially in this environment, I don't know, unless you're the Colts, you know what I mean? Unless you're someone that has like $50 million that you can afford, I don't see a team like the Lions being able to go after anybody who wants even 9 million or, even half of that,
Right.
They just don't have it, or I don't think that's in their long-term plans.
Unless you can structure that deal in a way where you space it out over a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the only thing I see in a low figure deal at this point. I just don't. There's not many people I really want out there. Jadeveon Clowney for me doesn't fit very well. He just doesn't fit what we do. He's a better 4-3. Sure. Defensive end than he is like a jack linebacker or any type of a rusher that way. Everson Griffin they've talked about. There's some mental issues there.
Sure.
Just not to be too.
He had that breakdown 2 years ago.
Yeah. He's had a lot though. There's a lot more than that. 3 months in stuff and in the sobriety thing and. He's had some issues, and do you want to take a chance on an older player that kills your cap for next year? And he plays the same position as Trey Flowers, essentially.
Yeah, if you brought in Everson Griffin, you would be basically putting him in the Romeo Okwara role. And then now you're asking Okwara to have to come up with something entirely new. Yeah. And that's or maybe – I can't see them moving on from him, right? I mean, especially with his brother just being drafted and them relying on Romeo to teach his brother the defense right now. Like right now, Julian is going to come into camp more prepared than any other rookie out there because he's literally living with Romeo and they're studying the playbook together, right? So, but I don't think they're going to move on from Romeo at this point. And
just
so
to go deeper in debt.
Yeah, I mean that's what. Yeah, you'd lose money by cutting out a Romeo. You'd lose money, or you'd gain a little bit of money by cutting a Romeo. But you're going to spend more in acquiring Everson Griffin. And then if he's looking at like 9 to 12 million. That's a ton of money. That's half of their available cap, and that's half that they're not going to have for next year. So I could see them
for a guy that plays a position that I think that Deshaun Hand would fill pretty nicely. You know,
they have some
end.
Their interest, the way that they use their front, they really need the guys to be flexible, to be inside and out. Both Hand, Williams, Flowers, Aquara, all of them can do the same thing. They can all play at a base 4-3 D end and play as a 3 technique. Yep. And while Williams and Hand are doing that on an every down basis, and Flowers and Aquara split that edge spot, both Flowers and Aquara kick inside quite a bit. And can Everson Griffin do that too? Yeah, maybe, but I don't think that they're going to try in this environment with asking a player to come in and completely learn a new playbook in the limited amount of time that they have, no games to prepare yourself for, basically 8 practices, and then you're on the field playing in week 1. That's a hard ask for any free agent that they bring in. And I think it's a big reason why we saw them target guys that knew the system in the offseason. They didn't just take former Patriot players because, you know, they're in love with the Patriots. They took former Patriot players because they can plug those guys right into the defense and not have to teach them, right? Mm-hmm. They have 3 guys that play at 3 different levels that all know the system right off the bat, and you're in good shape now. Like the only 2 spots that are really being replaced by someone who doesn't know the scheme are your 2 corners. And realistically, they can just tell them, you're in man coverage. They understand man coverage. You know what I mean? And
Patricia likes man anyway.
Right. And so there is a lot of turnover on defense, but they've turned over with players that know the system, and so there shouldn't be as big of a drop off as you will see in other teams that are changing coaches or changing schemes. I mean, like look at Carolina. They're doing a completely new offense, a completely new defense. How are they going to get up to speed in time to be competitive early on in the season? Will they be competitive by the time the Lions face them? We'll see. Not. But yeah, they got a lot to do. They got a lot to learn and a lot to do before. And I think there's a couple of teams like that. There's a couple of teams that have new coordinators or new schemes that they're putting into place, and those teams are going to struggle early. And the Lions aren't in that boat. If they struggle, it's going to be because of their youth. They're set up to rely on youth in a lot of key spots, and that's fine. And that's fine for development. How quickly can some of these guys learn? I think you'll be okay with Swift. I think you'll be okay with Okudah. I don't know about the guards. I don't know about Julian. As much as Julian's going to get right now, I don't know if he's going to be ready. It's hard to tell. Maybe he will be.
His help is Romeo, and I think that's a huge help for him. It is.
So how much are they going to rely on their rookies? It's a real tough spot if you're an undrafted rookie. You're in a real tough spot with this current environment. And you'll see, as you saw in the offseason, they signed a lot of veterans too that can come in and play. Like the veterans' learning curve compared to the rookies is like drastically different. So,
but I think they brought some of those guys into play and teach. So like Jamie Collins with Julian Aquara, with Amendola helping out Cephas, and a lot of these different players seems like they brought veteran people into the room, and former Patriots. Mm-hmm. Jerron Harmon with Tracy Walker, even because Tracy Walker's good, but he still needs to. He's almost at that position where he could be a Pro Bowler and really be something. And I think Harmon might help him. They're different players, but it's Harmon knows the Patriot way. It's Harmon knows, what it takes to be the professional. And I think those are the things that those guys bring to this team. Danny Shelton's another one. You have Danny Shelton and Trey Flowers on that line helping out too. So there's a good influence in every room, I think.
The only defensive lineman that doesn't know the scheme outside of the rookies is Nick Williams. Yes. Other than that, they all know the scheme, and Hand is so good at the scheme. He understands, like when you go to training camp and when the workout session is over, Hand every practice is taking the younger players out to show them technique and how, if they're not familiar to gapping or whatever. Like, he knows the system. Like, Harmon's I think the player that's going to benefit the most from Harmon is going to be CJ Moore, the undrafted rookie from last year. Like, he's always been a career special teamer, or not career, one year special teamer, but I think he has some upside that we haven't really seen just yet. You can see the flashes of talent. He's got really good speed. Harmon could be a big influencer on him, where a couple years down the line, he could be ready to take on a bigger role.
Wow. Okay.
But Harmon's, I think, in my opinion, Harmon was the most important addition of the offseason. And I think I believe that because he's going to allow Tracy Walker to play in a more natural position.
A deep cover person, and Tracy can come up and
Tracy.
Man.
Yeah, Tracy is such a slot, like, just warrior. He's big enough to play at the linebacker level. He's fast enough to play as a defensive back. He's long enough to play and cover in the slot. He does the
really
stuff that he can do.
Game to me.
Yeah, and honestly, having him and Collins on the field at the same time is going to help you cover both slots and tight end, running back. It doesn't matter who goes where. You've got a couple of guys now, and then if by adding Harmon, you're also going to get Will Harris into a more natural third safety, the old Tavon Wilson role, where he's going to play more at the box level. That's going to be more natural for him too. So I can't overstate how much I love the Deron Harmon
I think
addition.
Danny Shelton was a key pickup too.
Sure.
We needed somebody to replace Snacks, and you're not going to replace the old Snacks, but replacing this other Snacks that we got last year, that ain't hard.
Yeah. I mean, you have to look no further than 2018.
Yep.
Pre-Snacks and post-Snacks. When Snacks came in 2018, the entire defense changed.
Yes, it did.
And that's how important the nose spot is in this scheme. So, I mean, while I'm a Harmon fan, and you're going to find a lot of other people that are like saying Jamie Collins is the best addition because if he can do so much and he's going to let the other linebackers go, there's another argument to be made for Danny Shelton, because that role, it all ripples off of him. So all three of those guys were excellent additions. They all make you stronger up the middle. And that's really where Patricia wants the defense to be strong. If you can be strong up the middle, it allows all these other talented guys that you've been bringing in to be in more natural spots and flow to the ball more. And they're going to have to learn. They're going to have to make some adjustments. Like Jared Davis is going to have to expand his role quite a bit in order to stick around. But you added Tavai for a reason. He's going to fit real nice next to Collins. You added Tracy Walker.
He's going to be middle too. That's what I think too.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody says Jamie Collins is going to be an edge or something like this, and I'm like, no way. He's a middle.
He's going to be
a middle linebacker to me.
I think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be their Will. Okay, and the Will and the Mike are basically the Will and the Mike play basically the same spot. They both play off the ball, be over the guards essentially, right? Mm-hmm. The Mike plays on the tight end side. The Will plays on the non-tight end side. That's really the only difference. They both have the same types of responsibilities. The Mike gets a little bit more here, and then when they want to shift to more run defense, the Will drop and go closer to the line. Collins can do that. Christian Jones did it a ton last year. Tavai did that a lot last year. I think they're going to try and keep Tavai more at the Mike itself.
I agree with that.
But Collins is also going to be in that Mike spot.
Yep.
When I watched Collins' film from last year, I could count the times on my hand in any game that he lined up at the same spot in back-to-back plays. He was constantly at a different linebacker spot because he just doesn't sit still. You have Tavai who can do that. You have Christian Jones that can also complementary move spots. Now you add Tracy Walker down to the level, it gives you even more freedom to move those guys around. So Collins is a big addition in that way. I still think they're going to try and keep Tavai off the ball as much as possible. But Christian Jones they gave him a contract extension for a reason, and it's because he will be a player that can adapt to Jamie Collins' movement. Tavai, like I said, as well. Now, Jared Davis has always been a Mike. Very rarely got a little bit of Will last year, but he's going to be a guy that needs to expand. And if he can,
I think he needs to try to be. I got him in almost a jack position for the Lions, not so much in coverage, but on a special blitz play, on a go get the quarterback basically type of a player.
Yeah, blitzing from the will is like his best attribute.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
that's a good
terrific.
idea too.
He's terrific from the. If you can get him at the will and just blitz him, I mean, he's phenomenal. He's always found success that way. I do think they're going to try putting him at jack because I think they're going to try everyone at jack. I think all those off the ball linebackers, they're going to try and rotate through all those spots. So, yeah, it's he's got to take. Davis has got to expand his role. If he doesn't, it's going to be hard. I mean, they love his work ethic. They love his speed. He's always had control issues going after the ball, going after the runner, right? Yep. But this is an opportunity for him to not have as much responsibility and just be a see ball, get ball type of guy. And he could have one of his best seasons of the year if he expands, because I really think he can benefit from the other players of the additions of Tavai and Jamie Collins. I think a second-year Tavai is very enticing to me because I really liked what I saw from him in camp, and I don't think he touched his potential yet. He played okay, last season. He was real good sometimes, and then he showed he was a rookie sometimes. But the stuff that they did with him in training camp was really cool. And we didn't see a lot of that in the games. He was more playing like a static position, which is common of day two picks. Like, they try and get you to learn one spot really well before they start moving you around. But I really think the potential that Tavai has is pretty high. He's one of my guys that I think could be like a breakout player this year.
I think so too. He has a good instinct for the ball for me. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he always seems to be in the right spot. He makes interceptions. He tries to go after the ball. That is something that really troubled me. When we were really good in 2018, we were punching the ball out left and right. We were almost known for it. It was starting to become our identity, and then we just quit. It just stopped. And I'm like, how does that happen? How do you be really good at something and then just stop doing it altogether?
Justin Coleman's great at it.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see him get more aggressive like that and then see some of the other guys bring that back, because getting those turnovers, they're so important. Very important.
I am so sorry. I kept you so long. But talking football with somebody who knows what they're talking about is so much fun for me. I can't help it. I really appreciate you being here. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find your articles and where you're at and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, all the articles are on Lions Wire. So you just type in Lions Wire in Google or something like that. Or, if you just type in Lions Wire to the search bar, it'll take you right to the site. So that's where all my articles are. My podcast is Detroit Lions Breakdown. We have our own website, DetroitLionsBreakdown.com.
Nice.
We're on all of our, all the different podcast platforms from, iTunes, Spotify, and pretty much everything in between. We've been doing, myself and my partner, Joe, have been doing this for 3 years, a little over 3 years now. So we're starting to get, we're starting to get more comfortable, and it takes time, right?
It does. It takes time.
We had to learn how to go virtual this off season, which was, we usually are in the same room when we do it. But so, that's where you find, I put out podcasts every week. They're fun to listen to. And, we try and have some nice, serious conversations. We try not to get caught up on the drama, and we try not to be too hot takey. We try to just try and get good information out as quickly as we can. Cause like you said, it's fun to just talk football. There's always an angle that you can have. There's always a fun conversation that you can have when you start talking about the team that you're passionate about.
I agree. And I appreciate you being in the room with me today. I appreciate the interview and your time. I'm sorry it took so long. I just got in the conversation.
No,
but to everybody, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I get it. I don't even, I don't even really pay attention to the clock. When I do ours, Joe watches the clock because I literally will just talk for like 3 hours.
I know. I
not
do
paying
the same
attention.
thing. We have a round table we do, and it's a 2-hour show just about every show. But anyway, really appreciate you coming on. I thank you. Everybody out there, if you like the video, just like the video down there and give us a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and also hit the notification bell so you know that one of those videos are coming out. After you've done that, take 5 because you're probably exhausted. I would be. I'm just kidding. But anyways, thank you, Erik, for being on, and we're out. Okay.